Laura, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Tell me about your business. Tell me where you guys are located. Give me your website address, social media handles, all the good stuff.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us and letting us share a little bit about Laura Leigh Bridal. We're a boutique that's open right outside Philadelphia in South Jersey in Cherry Hill. For the local girls watching, it's right by the Cherry Hill Mall, which is a local spot for us.
Yeah.
We opened up in 2019, so we're actually very new. You can find us on Instagram at Laura Leigh Bridal, and also our website has the same name, lauraandleighbridal.com.
Nice, nice. So tell me the inspiration and the story behind starting the business.
Well, I've always wanted to own my own business. It was something that's kind of always been on my radar. And for me, I feel like I'm kind of an odd duck. I always was really interested in wedding fashion, even as a kid. I didn't even have goals or dreams of getting married. I just really loved the fashion. So, I was in a job and I wasn't really loving it. And someone suggested, hey, why don't you start your own business? And at first I was like super into the idea, but I realized there was a lot to learn because bridal is a whole different ballgame. Yeah. It's a world that you can't possibly expect until you're in it. So I left my cushy full-time job and I took a part-time job selling dresses. And I totally caught the bug and fell in love. So that was sort of like the inspiration. And then I started to see a few gaps. Like, I'm younger and I felt like a lot of stores didn't really know how to talk to me or my generation. So I wanted to start a business that was very inclusive, a little bit more relaxed, knew how to converse with generation, like the millennial generation, which is mine, and Generation Z, which is the upcoming one. Just something that's going to be a little bit more relaxed, a little more inclusive, and a little bit more socially active as well.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, what gaps did you see in the business? Because it is, like you said, like a lot of business, the wedding industry is a tough business. And there's a lot of, I don't know, I've been doing the research part for about 15 years now. And I feel like there's a lot of old school thinking sometimes. And so I agree with you. There's a lot of gaps. So tell me what gaps you saw and that you were trying to make a change around.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest thing I think is, one is the language being used. A lot of the time in the wedding industry, it can be very exclusionary. We talk a lot about brides and grooms, but really it's couples, people from all different walks of life get married, not just brides and grooms. That's right. So, readapting that language, starting to create places where it's a safe space. And that's something that was really important for me, is finding a place that no matter what your gender identity is or your sexual orientation, that someone knew how to talk to you. That was really big for me. The other thing is just understanding the millennial mindset. I think one of the coolest things about my generation is that we did not necessarily dream of our weddings growing up. So I think a lot of the time—
That's true. That's very true. Yeah.
It's different. Like, I did not grow up thinking about what wedding dress I was going to wear. I may have loved the fashion, but I didn't really plan a wedding. Yep. And I think there's a lot of education that millennials need because we don't grow up with those dreams necessarily. We have, like, I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a little kid. So for me, a wedding wasn't the first thing I thought about. So when they're planning weddings, a lot of the times you have to explain the process a little bit more and hold their hands and let them do the homework too. A lot of the times I felt like working at stores, they were saying, oh, sell the first day, but not everyone wants to do it that way. They want to shop around. They want to do their homework. They want to think and process and research and scroll through Instagram and Pinterest. And I think there was no store that understood that. They would get frustrated if they didn't buy the first day, but that's because people walked in not knowing what to do at first, So that's why I kind of felt like there needed to be a different approach to this process.
Yeah. That's important. I think that's important that you realize that, because I think a lot of times, especially in the sales field, right, they try to put a lot of process around getting the sale the first day, and putting all these things around trying to hook them in and saying the right thing. And, I agree with you. I think people especially millennial generation, they're processing, they're learning, they're trying to pull all the facts in and kind of like, what do I need to do? There's so much information out there for them to process that it's like, all right, wait a minute, let me just hang on. My daughter, she's like, she's 26 and she's like, I see it all the time. She's like, wait, Dad, there's all this stuff, wait, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, go look at this. It's like, I'm dad, so I'm just telling her what to do. And she's like, no, wait. I'm like, okay. So I started to learn, right? Like that, wait, she's got to process the information a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
Like, I mean, just think about the process of buying a car or a laptop for someone, right?
yeah,
Like, you research, you watch 8 million YouTube videos on it, you go through and you Google every sort of like database on what's the best option for you, and then you may make a purchase. It's the same thing for a wedding dress. And I think when you think about it that way, people start to understand a little bit more. I mean, we get a lot of girls coming back because we don't push the sale the first day. If it's their first time out, we let them take their time and really think. And I think
that's great. That's great. Yeah. So let's talk about the process. So, how do people find you? Do they find you online usually? Do they call you guys up? I mean, do they stop by? And then what does that process look like?
I am like addicted to my phone. And the reason why is because we have girls DMing me on Instagram, sending me messages on Pinterest, Facebook. We try to make ourselves as accessible as possible. So
Yes.
I am constantly getting messages. I would say the biggest pull right now is Instagram for us.
Good.
We do a lot of Instagramming and we have a lot of girls reaching out to us. Newly big for us is TikTok because that's starting to becoming a very big emerging social media platform. So we actually have started growing that as well. And then a really big pull through our website. I think a lot of the times people don't want to call anymore. They just want the answer pretty quickly through an email. So we do a lot of emailing and chatting online.
Yeah. Or DM or text, right? I mean, I feel like people just want to, actually, I like that.
Me too.
Even though I'm an older person, I like to be able to text somebody and get a response. I don't want to have to
I love a
you.
good chat online.
Yeah, or a good chat, right? Like, I mean, I think my daughter's just, I mean, like I'm learning from my kids too, right? It's like, I don't think I can have a phone conversation with most of the time. It's like, no, it's just a text message or
Yeah, it's easier.
It's totally easier. And you don't, it's like, you don't have to be available right then. You can just do it asynchronously, right? So it's like, oh, it works,
It works around their schedules. And I think that's another important thing is people are busy. They don't want to sit on the phone for 20 minutes. They just want to answer you when they have time.
Yep.
And so we try to make ourselves available for when they do need us.
That's good. Good.
I do answer all kinds of phone calls. During this pandemic, while we've been closed, I got phone calls in the middle of the night at like 7 a.m. I'm not an early riser, so that was very early for me, that phone call. But you better believe I got out of bed and just tried to help her out and figure out what the answer was and what the problem is.
That's awesome. So once they connect with you guys, what's the process? When they come in, they tell me what is the process for them?
So we recommend starting the whole process at least 1 year out, especially now post coronavirus, because we saw so many delays. So we say 1 year out, get that first appointment in at least. Try on a few dresses, try on a few styles, figure out what fits for you. Then go through, try on another time. Now that you figured out what works, if you don't find it day one, come back. And now that you figured out what works, try on those dresses. Now, right, round one also probably includes a little bit of Pinterest or Instagram research. We always refer girls back to our Pinterest and say, hey, scroll through, save some options, come in with those ready to go. And then from there, that's when that first appointment begins. So that's about a year out. And then around 8 months to a year out is when you should probably say yes. That gives you plenty of time for shipping, plenty of time for the dress to come in, because we like to do a little celebration appointment when the dress has arrived. Nice. And then alterations, of course.
Yeah.
So you want that to kind of be a leisurely process. Can things happen quicker? Of course. But the stress-free way to go through this is to start a year out and decide at least 8 months to a year out.
That doesn't always happen, right? Like I'm sure there's last minute.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. what would you say are some things that couples are asking for today when they come in to see you? Like, what are some trends that maybe other couples should be thinking about, or that you're seeing most often?
Well, the biggest emerging trends in bridal generally is a lot of sparkle. This last year and this year, been seeing a lot of sequins, a lot of glitter. Thankfully, a lot of it's optional, so that if you're not a sparkle person, you're not
Yeah.
feeling isolated. And also a lot of clean. Ever since Meghan Markle stepped out a few years ago, clean has been running the show. People
Nice.
may not necessarily want exactly her look, but they like the feel and the vibe that she had on her wedding day. So
Mhm.
we have a lot of requests for clean, sophisticated looks. Um, and then the other sort of emerging trends in bridal is like refined minimalism. So like simple veils, classic clean cuts, um, very like interesting modern structures. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
We're getting some good fashion this year, so I'm really really excited about it.
Nice. So, do you guys work with multiple designers, or do you have specific set of designers that you only work with?
So we have a handful of designers that we carry. So what typically happens in a lot of bridal stores, not just mine, is we have a sort of a contract set up with specific designers, and then we
Yeah.
select a portion of their collection per season. So every season, I bring up a team to New York, and what I like to do, which is a little different, um, is bring myself and bring a couple people who may not necessarily be in bridal but like fashion, because I like to see what they're seeing, right? Like, so they may
Yeah.
not necessarily know the lingo, they may not necessarily know what to look for, but they may see something or care about something that I don't notice, right? Like
Yeah.
I may be sitting there obsessing over the way a hemline looks, but they don't care. They're like, the dress is pretty, who
Yeah.
cares if it's a rolled hemline or not? I like it. um and so I think it's really good every time I try to bring a new voice in, just to see like
That's
what other
good.
people are thinking.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool you do that. What questions should couples be thinking about asking when they're coming into a dress shop?
Well, right now during coronavirus, I think the most important thing is to ask a store what their policies are, because every store is going to be a little different for how they approach an appointment at this time.
Mhm.
Every store is going to have different mask requirements, different party sizes. I think the biggest thing, though, generally to ask about is timeline. See if the store is a good fit for you style wise. And I also really recommend asking about a store's budget, what ranges that store is in, right?
Okay.
Not every store is budget conscious, and not every store is going to be the perfect fit. So you want to do that legwork beforehand, so that way you don't get into the store and feel like it's been a waste of your time. The
Right.
worst thing to me, especially when I used to work at another store, is it skewed a little higher end, and someone would come in with a budget and would not be able to shop there, and so
Yeah.
she would feel frustrated when she left. But it's not at either side's fault, right? If she had asked, maybe she would have been told in advance, or if the person screening the call had been like, hey, like, what are you thinking budget wise?
Hmm.
So always ask like those kinds of key questions. Do you have this dress? I've been stalking your designers forever, and I love like this one dress by this designer. Do you have it? That happens a lot to us because every store carries a small portion of a line, right?
Yeah.
So people come in assuming when they see the designer that we have everything, and then they get a little
Yeah.
frustrated. So definitely, if there's a dress you're stalking, ask for it first before you walk in the door.
Yeah, for sure. The budget question is interesting. I don't think a lot of uh, companies think about that, like being a little more, what's the right question for them to ask? Like,
Mhm.
when they're thinking, I mean, I know you guys are probably like, well, what's your budget? Well, what should they be thinking about? I mean, I know the average is $1,200 or so, depending, it changes depending on the market, but
Yeah.
US average is $1,200 roughly.
Mhm.
Um, how did they get to that question with you guys?
So what we usually do is when we ask for it, we say our store ranges from 1,200 to 5,000.
Yeah.
Our sweet spot is around 2 to 3. Is that something you're comfortable with? Where would you
Gotcha.
prefer we keep your price point? Because one of the things that's important to me, and something I pound home to my girls all the time is never put a bride in something she can't afford. So
Yeah.
make sure that you ask, what are you comfortable with up front?
Yeah.
Because I don't want her to like fall in love with the dress and then feel some sort of way because she can't get it. It's
Yeah.
one of the
Well,
worst
they
things.
feel heartbroken,
Yeah, it's
actually.
heartbreaking, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
So, and then they can't get that dress out of their head. It's just, it usually winds up in as a mess. So we always ask someone what they're comfortable with. And the
Good.
other thing that we do is we put all of our pricing on our tags for people to try and be transparent with them. That
That's
way,
good.
if they have a problem, they can take a look themselves and be like, you know what? No. So
Yeah. Yeah.
if they're calling, I would just point blank ask, like, what is your range? What is your average?
Hmm.
I'm trying to stay under 1,500. Can that happen at your store?
Yeah.
It's not to deter or to discourage, but sometimes like stores can even have like sample sales or ways to help you if you're budget conscious. So always ask before you even come in too,
Okay,
because
cool. Yeah,
that
that's
creates
good.
for you.
Yeah. I think people are very, I don't know, cost conscious these days.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, definitely.
and it's not necessarily because they don't want to spend money. I think it's because they get bombarded with discounts and various other things around spending. So it's just on their
There's
mind.
so much more to planning a wedding now too. It's not
Yeah.
just the dress, the venue, and the food. It's an experience now, and so
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving pieces for a bride and her budget, and that's why for at least my store, we try so hard to maintain what she's asked for, because the last thing I want to do is to take away from some other part of the wedding's experience because she went over here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if it's important to her, then this is what, or him, this will be what it is,
Right.
right? This is what
Yeah,
they want.
exactly.
Yeah. 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 Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the business side of things. What would you say for you guys has over the past maybe year or so, as well, since you started, right? What would you say has worked well for you?
I think the thing that has worked best for us is relaxing a little bit, having fun with the brides. I tell all my girls, if at the end of the appointment you're not invited to the wedding, you've done something wrong. Because the most important thing is to make sure that
Yeah.
that girl feels like she has an ally and a friend in that dressing room. Um, yeah, we sell and that's how we make our money, but we're also about experience and having fun through the whole process. And that to us works the best.
Yeah.
We constantly feel like, if someone's coming back, they're coming back for us.
That's right.
The other thing is transparency. We are 100% honest with somebody about like the way things work, how they work, what pricing is, what options they have. So when we tell someone, hey, this dress is coming in 6 months, we mean it. We're not padding the time. We're not padding the pricing. We're honest with them. And I think that goes a long way when it's clear that you're being honest.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of horror stories in the market around service side of the business, and I'm sure you have too. I think that's probably the most important piece is like the service part and the experience, that they're feeling like that. I think you're right. You're right on by saying, look, if you didn't get invited to the wedding, then you did something wrong. Uh, that's actually the perfect thing. Like you should rate all your employees based on how many weddings they get invited to.
Oh, I'm
Right?
doing it. I'm gonna put like a little like thing on the wall.
Yeah, you should do it. And the ones that get invited to the most weddings, give them a bonus or something
I
like
like
that.
it.
Yeah, that gives them a good challenge, right? What would you say, for you guys, outside of coronavirus? What has been like the biggest challenge for you guys?
I mean, for us, we're a new business. So the biggest thing is building our reputation in the community. There's a lot of wonderful shops in our area that have been around for a very long time. So they're very established. And I think there's a level of trust there.
Yeah,
They've been doing something for 50 years. Clearly, something's
right.
working there. So for us, it's getting the brides to understand, like, we may be new, but your dress is in good hands.
Yeah,
And now that we've had a year and people have understood like what we're about and how we do things is coming around. But I think that's been our biggest hurdle so far is just building that reputation. And I think what makes your reputation stick is giving those promises and then delivering on those
that's
promises.
right.
Right?
Yeah,
If I say your dress is coming in, it's going to come in on the day I promise. And if it doesn't, I'm constantly in communication with you as to why.
yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. If you had to go back and tell yourself something a year ago before you started this thing, what would you tell yourself?
Relax a little bit. I think, I started this, I really started planning and moving on it back in October of 2018, and didn't actually launch until January 2019. And I think a lot of it was stress and making sure everything was perfect and in
Sure.
line. And I think at the end of the day, our brand is about having fun with it. And I think if I could go back in time, I would have said, have a bit more fun during the planning process.
Yeah.
Uh, and I wish I had taken pictures more. I wish I had taken a lot of pictures
Like where
of,
you were then and to where you
yeah,
are. Yeah.
yeah. Even now I look back at those pictures and I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe like our store looked that empty. And because now we're like packed with dresses.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think a lot of times we do that. We stress ourselves out with the plan and,
Oh yeah, especially in
forget
this
to,
industry. Everyone's
yeah,
always like so nervous.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so one of the things I was thinking about when we're talking about the business side is that a lot of times manufacturers try to, I was having a conversation with another dress shop before, is that they're very picky about who they work with.
Hmm.
Um, and I want to get your thought on this. Like, do you feel like, manufacturers try to pressure you guys into doing certain, buying a lot more than you need to buy? And and I think this is where they were coming from. This is a dress shop in the Portland, Oregon area,
Hmm.
and they were saying, or they were basically saying that they were getting a lot of pressure to buy a lot of stuff from these things, and they didn't want to carry all that inventory because they weren't selling it. And at the end of the day, they have all this inventory left over. Um,
Yeah.
so they were basically like putting the pressure back on the manufacturers to say, look, we're not going to work with you guys if this is what you're going to do to us. So how do you how do you deal with that as a business, even though you're young and fresh? Um, I got to imagine you've already seen this probably from working in the business, right, for a while, and you're like, I'm gonna figure out how to conquer this. So what are you doing, and how are you dealing with those sorts of things?
Well, I came from a store that was phenomenal, and I learned a lot from the owner who had the same issues. Now she was very established in the business, and had the muscle to say, you know what, I'm not carrying your line, and then people would be like, oh wait, sorry, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
So I was used to having that sort of muscle behind me. So when I would say like at market, oh, the minimums are too high or whatever,
right.
um, it was easy to get what I wanted. Now I'm small potatoes because it's just me, and I don't have that big store with that big reputation behind me. The store in Portland's absolutely right.
Yeah,
I think the hard part is understanding what the minimums are and understanding like where you have room to play. Um, I'm a very data driven person, which I think is kind of weird in our industry.
it
I
is
like
weird. Yeah, yeah,
That's actually why it took me so long to even open, is I spent so many years like studying the data of like what this industry is like. Like I compared your stuff to the Knott's wedding report every year, and I would like take a look at where the things were moving and what trends are happening and
yeah,
everything. So
yeah. Good.
when I look at the numbers and I make decisions about who to carry and who not to carry, a lot of it is data driven. The other thing is I won't work with someone who doesn't want to team up with me. If they don't see the value in our store, I may say, I'm sorry, like that's it.
Adios.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I also have a phenomenal team behind me telling me like which designers are the ones I choose my battles with. I
yeah,
lean a lot on that information. This one designer maybe has high minimums, but they also return a lot for us. So maybe
yeah.
we don't fight as much with them as we do with somebody else. But I'm also very lucky. Like at this time, the designers that I carry, every person has been really wonderful with me starting up. Some designers even loaning me dresses indefinitely while I waited till my store got enough inventory to look
Nice.
full.
Yep.
And also understanding, the reality of the situation with coronavirus. My
Yeah,
store, as well as all the other stores in New Jersey, were closed for a very long time.
yeah,
So that was really nice, is working with designers who understand that. And I think for other stores, like advice I would give is have those real conversations with your sales reps. They want you to succeed because if the line succeeds, they do.
That's right.
So
It's
at the
good.
end of the day, if the line's not lucrative for you, it's not lucrative for them. And I think it's best to part ways with that line.
Yeah. Do you feel like that has changed over the years? Like when you were working in the other store and then now you're doing your own thing. Do you feel like that manufacturers have kind of like, look, I need to help them more. I can't put this much. Do you feel like that's changed a little bit?
I think the quotas haven't changed. If anything, their minimums have increased over the years.
Yeah.
But what I do see is when I explain my situation, that's when I start to see like, okay, like, well, maybe we won't do 7 pieces this year. We'll do 7 next year. And this year we'll only do 5. Or,
Yeah.
you know, if you do 14 dresses, we'll try and figure out some sort of discount policy for you or a 60-day terms or something.
Gotcha.
I think it's more of a matter of honesty and transparency because the salesperson doesn't know your situation. They don't, to their mind, you're selling dresses, so everything's great.
Yeah.
You don't know that you're sitting on like 80 dresses from other designers that are just chilling in your store.
Yeah. Well, and customers don't understand that either, right? Like you're
Oh
sitting
yeah.
on 80 dresses from multiple designers and you may or may not ever sell them. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Also, don't be afraid to unload it with the sample sale. If that dress isn't selling,
get rid of it. Yeah.
don't worry about it. Just get rid of it. It's taking up space.
That's right. So what is your most, I'm sure you have some stories, even though you've been in business for just a little over a year. So what is your most inspirational wedding story you have?
Um, well, there's a few. I mean, one of the greatest gifts I think that a bridal shop has is you get to be part of that bride's experience the whole time from the moment she gets engaged and makes that initial contact with you through like all the way to the end, because if you're doing alterations, you get to see her all the way up to the weeks before her wedding.
Yeah.
So the most beautiful thing is getting to see that whole arc. And getting to share in those moments from like the beautiful ones where she's like all happy and joyous to the ones where she's like totally having a panic attack.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the most rewarding things just in general. But I think there's a couple girls who've really like sort of gotten me. Actually, the young lady I mentioned who pulled up curbside the other day from Tennessee, she goes way back. Actually, she was friends with my sister, and that's how she found my store.
Nice.
Thankfully, my sister spreads the word.
Right.
I'd be mad if she didn't, so that's good.
Yeah.
So she had shopped for a long time with her grandmother, and you know they had talked a lot about the wedding dress, and her grandmother helped her pick the wedding dress. And then unfortunately, her grandmother passed a couple months ago.
Wow.
So for her, this whole experience has been very emotional, and she was having like a sort of a panic moment where she was worried about her size and whether or not the dress fit and everything. So just having her like relax and come back, and she brought her grandmother's caretaker with her. So it was just kind of like a nice moment to see her from when she bought the dress with her grandmother till now, and how much that dress really truly means to her. I mean,
Wow.
that's the beautiful thing about fashion is that when we have something that makes us feel good, it means a lot. And for her, not only does that dress make her feel good, but it has some sentimentality. Like that was one of her most recent memories with her grandmother. So that's very special.
Yeah.
The other one is like this one day I had a couple walk in, and they were just these random 2 ladies, and they had been shopping over at David's, and they found a dress for one of the fiancés, but then the other one didn't really have much luck. They just kind of wandered in and were looking at stuff, and she didn't have a big budget, but she had a vision. She wanted an A-line, a little bit of tulle at the bottom, and we found her a bridesmaid's dress that came in ivory. And so the sale wasn't big for us. Like it was just a random one-off thing. We hung out for the afternoon because it was quiet in the store, and we talked about
Nice.
her wedding planning and everything. And then one day I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I see her all over Philadelphia Wedding Magazine, and I saw like their wedding come together. I saw the vision come together, and I shared her picture and everything. And I think we became like friends through the experience. And so even though it may not have been my biggest sale, it was one of the most exciting to see like it from the initial stages all the way through to her wedding day. And then to get to see her store's name in a magazine, like that was really exciting.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, those are those are the reasons that we do what we do, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Laura, thanks so much for doing this. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.